There is plenty of talk about how tariffs will be part of the trade landscape after the rapidly upcoming presidential election. And it doesn't matter if it's a Harris or a Trump administration. We'll talk tariffs this morning, and Pure Prairie Poultry left growers in the upper Midwest holding the bag with no feed in that bag. We'll get the latest.
Live from the forefront of the front edge of the news via Farm Journal Studios, this is AgriTalk. This morning we'll begin with a conversation with former U.S. Congressman from Pennsylvania, Charlie Dent. Then it's Brian Winnekins from WRDN Radio in Wisconsin. And directly following the news, Karen Bonert from Farm Journal's Milk. I'm handsome newsman Davis Michelson. Now here's the host of AgriTalk, Jeff Flory.
All right, Davis A., thank you so much. It is 60 degrees and the sun is shining here in northeast Iowa.
We've got a tropical heat wave going here.
Okay, what do you got?
Now wait a second. There's disagreement. My computer says 71 degrees and sunny. My phone says 67 degrees and sunny. Headed for a high of 84 today, though.
Is there that much of a difference between your phone and your laptop?
Well, they're like 3 feet apart right now. Let me hold them closer together. Oh, no, there we go. Okay, if I hold them closer together, yeah, there's a pocket. It's a pocket.
Everything comes together. But it rained this morning.
You know, here's a funny thing, and I'm not being silly. I had this conversation with my wife already. I don't know if I dreamed that it rained or if right before bed I was going to take the dog out and looked outside and saw that it had started to sprinkle a little bit or something and thought, let's wait on that. I don't know if that actually happened, if I'm really thinking about it, because the phone says we got no rain. I don't know. So just a dream.
Wow. We had one band of showers go over us, and it's still in eastern Iowa. It's still along the Mississippi and stretches down into west central Illinois. And so that band of showers is still out there. But, we picked up, I don't know if we even got a couple of hundreds, to be honest with you. I doubt if it was enough to wash the dust off of everything that lines the gravel roads out here in northeast Iowa. So pretty tough situation. All right, tariffs. We're going to talk tariffs. Charlie Dent is a former U.S. Congressman from Pennsylvania. Looking forward to the conversation with Representative Dent. And Brian Winnekins, WRDN, has been keeping us up to speed on what's going on with the Pure Prairie Poultry situation, issues. And he's going to come on and give us the latest in the developments there. All right, man, let's get to the news. What do you got?
Well, let's start with the weather in Alaska. A large, strong fall storm will bring coastal flooding, strong winds, and heavy snow to a large portion of the northern and western coast and interior of the state. Monsoonal moisture in a low-pressure area will produce excessive rain that may lead to flash urban and small stream and river flooding across Guam and the Northern Mariana Islands. Shout out to Guam and the Marianas, I guess, there, Chip. But
I guess.
Sounds like Speedo weather is over in Alaska for the season. Okay. World Weather Inc. says, with more rain on the way this week, planting and establishment conditions will further improve or remain favorable across Brazil's main production areas. Those sustained rains are needed to support ideal long-term crop development. Private exporters reported sales of 359,500 metric tons of corn for delivery to Mexico during the 24-25 marketing year. The export sales continue, Chip.
Yeah, it's really good news. The corn market is reflecting some of that this morning. The demand is coming in. It's something that we've been talking about in the afternoon hour of AgriTalk for a couple of weeks now, and it is starting to have an influence on corn prices.
Well, just real quick, let's check in on some crop progress report highlights. Corn is 98% mature, compares to 95%. We're 65% harvested. That's ahead of average. Soybeans, 81% harvested, way above the 67% on average. Cotton, we've got 37% good to excellent. Winter wheat, 73% planted, just behind the average, but 46% emerged, which is also behind the average, which is 50%. The Dow and S&P 500 opened the week with losses, while the Nasdaq managed to finish higher yesterday after a late push pulled the index into positive territory. Crude oil prices rebounded yesterday, settling nearly 2% higher after last week's significant losses.
Yeah, Dow's under some pressure here this morning, too.
Dow under some pressure this morning. The wholesale beef prices continued to surge. Choice is up to $322.86, Chip. Select was up as well yesterday. Estimated packer margins have improved to more than $61 a head above break even yesterday. This according to hedgersedge.com.
Should help the cash market.
And Chip, following a visit to a McDonald's restaurant by President Trump on the campaign trail, Democratic Senators Elizabeth Warren, Bob Casey, and Ron Wyden requested more information on McDonald's pricing decisions in a letter saying price hikes have outpaced inflationary pressures and input costs. Meanwhile, at a Michigan town hall with Vice President Kamala Harris and former Congresswoman Liz Cheney, moderator Maria Shriver confirmed only predetermined questions would be allowed. Critics on social media characterized the event as staged, with some calling it a pep rally and a prepped answer show. But isn't that what the campaign trail is, in fairness, Chip? I mean, you're just running pep rallies across the nation, right? Isn't that what you do?
Yeah, but don't bill it as a town hall, then. Town hall is supposed to be an open forum.
Aha! Well, with that, do we need to get to Karen Bonert?
Oh, we do, absolutely. Let's bring in Karen Bonert. She's been out traveling around. Karen, fresh back from Europe. What did you learn?
Hey, Chip, I'm just back from Europe, where I traveled to Paris, France for the IDF World Dairy Summit. It was fascinating, to say the least. We had 1,200 plus attendees from 68 countries gather. Yes, indeed, this was a global event. And one thing that I really loved was hearing from the CEO from Danone, who spoke from the heart and honestly is a champion for dairy farmers. He shared that he understands the numerous challenges dairy farmers around the globe are facing, such as the impact of climate change and the mounting financial pressures. And he said, we cannot talk about sustainability and not talk about profitability. And I truly feel, Chip, that dairy farmers are saying, finally, it's not about greed. If we're not cash flowing, it truly doesn't matter if we're doing everything else right. All eyes are on Africa too, Chip. They said by 2050, 1 in 4 people in the world will live in Africa. So this is a huge emerging market that not only the United States has interest in, tapping, so to speak, so do so many other countries. Countries around the world, from Asia to Oceania and everywhere else in between, talked about the challenges that they face. And it was water scarcity, it was labor challenges, it was regulations. Not one country escapes challenges. The good news, Chip, is that dairy is becoming the protein source of choice around the globe. And as countries generate more disposable income, they're investing it in dairy. And this is a truly big moment as well. And so I feel with solid communication and truly working as a global nation, the dairy industry will continue to thrive and be a dominant force, if you will, to feed the world in the coming years. So yes, I'm back on U.S. soil. I'm exhausted, lots of travel. But Chip, I left inspired that despite the challenges that we face around the globe, that there is this, steadfast commitment to feed a growing global nation. As a dairy farmer and as a dairy editor, I'm super proud.
Excellent. Thank you, Karen. Charlie Dent is up next.
In the morning, you're coffeeed up and you're thinking. In the afternoon, you've calmed down, but you're still thinking. We're here all day. AgriTalk.
Davis, 2 weeks from today, presidential elections.
2 weeks from today, yeah.
Congressional elections, Senate elections. I mean, it's happening. Yep. Federal, state elections. It's all happening 2 weeks from today, man.
I think early voting opens in Missouri today, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
I'd have to check it, but I think so, yeah. I mean, stuff is definitely happening. It's shaking loose here, bro.
No doubt about it.
We're almost to the end.
Yes, yeah. And in the ag community, I mean, we talk a lot about what the trade plans might be for a Harris administration or a Trump administration, and the plans to use tariffs for as a management tool in U.S. trade relations is being talked about quite a bit. But tariffs also come with risks of retaliation, disrupted supply chains. Let's take a look at the use of tariffs with former U.S. Representative Charlie Dent. Congressman Dent represented the 15th District of Pennsylvania, and he is a founding member of our Republican legacy. Congressman Dent, welcome to AgriTalk. How are you?
Hey, Chip, great to be with you this morning. Happy to join you.
Good. Hey, before we talk trade policy and tariffs, tell me a little bit about our Republican legacy.
Yeah, we're a group of Republicans established by former U.S. Senators Jack Danforth of Missouri, Alan Simpson of Wyoming, and Bill Cohen of Maine. Basically, we're a group of Republicans who want the party to return to something more principles-based. It's fair to say our members are fairly dispirited. We're not crazy about the MAGA agenda, and we feel that there needs to be an alternative narrative to MAGA, and we believe in 5 core principles. We believe in the Constitution, the rule of law, peaceful transfer of power. We thought January 6th was an abomination. We believe in the Union. Abraham Lincoln was our founder. He wanted to keep this country together, not divide it. We believe in free markets. We're not talking about going back to 1850 or the 1920s, but with modern reasonable regulation. But we support free markets. We're against things like these across-the-board indiscriminate tariffs. We think they're very destructive economically and will hurt a lot of farmers and manufacturers here in the U.S. We also believe in a strong international policy, foreign policy that embraces allies and rejects autocratic thugs like Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un. And we also think that the country needs to once again have some conversation about fiscal discipline. Neither party's having that conversation. So that's what we're about. We're trying to create this alternative agenda that we think the Republican Party is grounded in 170 years. These principles have sustained us and will carry us forward. And we like to challenge the MAGA philosophy.
Gotcha. Okay. You mentioned free and fair trade. I've always been a believer that there is no free or fair trade, but there can be freer and fairer trade. That should be the goal. What kind of a role do tariffs play in creating a freer and fairer trade environment?
Well, look, I think that we have tariffs that get imposed that have been negotiated over the years, and we're not talking about those. What we're referring to today are what's being proposed by former President Trump as it relates to across the board indiscriminate tariffs of 10 to 20%. We think that is terribly misguided. Many of us who had served in Congress as Republicans, we voted for bilateral or multilateral trade agreements to open markets for American producers, growers, manufacturers, service providers, and others. That's where we think we need to be headed. We're not going to be able to win this trade, this international economic competition with China by simply trying to out-subsidize them or impose tariffs. We think this is a wrong-headed direction. And we do think that there is a role for tariffs. Again, if a country is illegally subsidizing an industry, using slave labor in a particular industry, sure, countervailing duties or tariffs are an appropriate mechanism. But across the board is where I get concerned. And to take it home, and by the way, I always like to point out, the idea of retaliation is not only a risk, it's a certainty. So if we impose tariffs 200% on John Deere, because of what they're doing in Mexico, I can assure you the Mexicans are going to probably retaliate on American corn growers. Mm-hmm. Take it to the bank, or make it simple. I represented Pennsylvania, and I had Hershey in my district, South Central Pennsylvania. We don't grow cocoa in the United States, but we need to import it by the shipload in order to make chocolate. And they're making 70 million kisses, Hershey Kisses a day out there, which is a lot of loving. And now you need a lot of cocoa to do that. So, the price goes up 10 to 20%. This is an impact on American manufacturing. Or when they tried to impose the tariffs on aluminum in the name of national security. Again, a company like Hershey, they wrap all those kisses in a very fine aluminum foil. There's very limited domestic supply, most from Europe, some from South Korea, some from Europe, and a little bit from China. And so the whole point was, okay, well, the price of packaging goes up. I mean, so these are the kinds of we have to think about these consequences. We saw this with Smoot-Hawley back in 1930. Global trade dropped from $3 trillion to $1 trillion, and every economist of every stripe will tell you that those across the board tariffs at that time exacerbated the Great Depression. We were actually the market was starting to rebound at the time of Smoot-Hawley in 1930. And then this happened, and it really prolonged the Depression. So, and again, I think American agriculture has the most to lose in a trade war. There really aren't just losers.
Yep. Well, I tell you what, Congressman, the reason that I wanted to get you on here and talk about this is because your district is so heavily dependent on trade, on international trade, not just state by state, but international trade. And that's why I wanted to get you on here. Now, the Biden administration, or the Biden-Harris administration, could have removed some of those Trump-era tariffs. Why didn't they?
Well, because they're essentially protectionists too. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, look, historically, at least since the Second World War, and certainly during my time in Congress, it was the Republican Party that was the party that was trying to open up markets, that was really promoting more, freer trade. It was the Democrats, because of their pressure from organized labor, that has really made them more of a protectionist party. Of course, then came Donald Trump, who more or less adopted the AFL-CIO position on trade, being much more protectionist. And so the Democrats are still where they've always been policy-wise. Not all of them, but many of them, or most of them. And so now I think you'll see that, so the Biden administration really kept a lot of the Trump tariffs, and I don't know that it's really helped us. And by the way, these tariffs tend to be inflationary. If we add them to the extent they're being suggested, it will certainly contribute to inflationary pressure.
Okay, there's an ongoing debate, and I'm not exactly sure why, but there is an ongoing debate in answering what should be a very simple question, and that very simple question is, who pays for tariffs?
We, the American consumer. That's a very simple question. I mean, the importer pays the tariff; it's tax. And so it's not like China's going to pay a tax. Well, China will suffer because I suspect, or not just China, but any country, Trump often says China's going to pay the tariffs. Well, not really. The way it works is that whatever country is exporting to us, they will feel pain, because I suspect whatever it is they're selling to us, they will sell less of. And so they will feel that pain. But at the end of the day, those products that do come through into the United States, the tariff will be paid for by the American consumer. I mean, that 10 or 20% gets added on at the border. That's what will happen when it comes through. And so there's no way of escaping that. And so that's the harsh reality. And so I don't know. I mean, go ask the folks at Wharton. That noise you hear is Wharton wanting their business degree back from Donald Trump every time he says, China's paying for the tariffs. They're not.
Okay. He also says that it will not cause an interruption or disrupt the supply chain of the products that we really need. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I would have to respectfully disagree. I mean, there are many people who are making things in this country, and they rely on various imports that are inputs into their manufacturing process. And if the price goes up significantly, obviously it affects the cost of their production. And so that will have an enormously disruptive impact. Now, here's another great example. The big Dutch company that makes the machines to help produce the semiconductors, the chips. They're in the Netherlands. Those machines, I'm told, sell for hundreds of millions of dollars. So, okay, so put a 10, 20% tariff on that. Well, guess what? The price of that machine goes up. That's a lot. Now we're talking real money here. It goes up on a sale of a few $100 million. And this is, of course, we're trying to make chips so that we can compete against China and, protect our own national security in the process, make these essential chips. So you speak to disruption. That is disruption. And, I could even go back further, and this is where, both Biden, Trump, and Harris, all of them are, I think, in many cases, wrong on some issues. Look at they're trying to sabotage the Nippon U.S. Steel deal right now in Pennsylvania. Right. Nippon's trying to invest a few billion dollars to upgrade American steel facilities to make steel here, and they're all against it. I guess they'd rather have the taxpayers subsidize these industries.
Congressman, we are out of time. You have added to the conversation here. We certainly appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Great to be with you, Chip.
All right,
Thank
former U.S. Congressman Charlie Dent from Pennsylvania.
Time for Markets Now with the experts from ProFarmer.
Joining us now, ProFarmer editor Brian Grady. Beej, we've got some strength in corn, soybeans, and a little bit of strength in wheat today. What's going on?
Yeah, absolutely, Chip. Another daily corn sale this morning to Mexico, and so that's providing some fundamental support. But I think really we kind of have to look to some of the outside markets here. The crude oil market sharply higher, and commodities as a whole are trading sharply to the upside. And so that's kind of raising the tide, so to speak, and providing buyer interest across most of the grain and soy complex, the exception being soy meal, which is under a little bit of price pressure here at mid-morning.
Yeah, very good. And soybean oil sharply higher here this morning. It's got to be getting a boost from crude.
Absolutely, the crude oil boost, and then Indonesia moving forward with plans for B40 biodiesel and on the outlook B50, and so that'll take some of the palm oil supplies off the world market and probably boost soy oil or demand there.
Yeah, very good. Okay, take us to the livestock trade. Higher prices in the cattle complex.
Absolutely. So they're being lifted by the strength in commodities as a whole, as I mentioned, but moderate to strong gains across live cattle and feeder cattle. The wholesale beef price is absolutely on fire and continue to just surge here, and so that's providing fundamental support. That's allowed the cash cattle market to strengthen for 6 straight weeks, and so we're seeing that carry through to the futures trade with buying there. The feeder cattle, they're trading to the upside despite the strength in the corn market this morning, so I think that's notable. And then hog futures, a big move, contra-seasonal strength here, especially in the December contract.
Excellent. Thank you, Brian. That is ProFarmer editor Brian Grady on Markets Now.
Opinions expressed on AgriTalk do not necessarily reflect the views of Farm Journal Broadcasting, affiliate stations, or sponsors. You're listening to AgriTalk, where the conversation begins. Join us at 855-4-TALK-AG.
Davis, did you see that Ozzy is finally in the Rock Hall of Fame? How did that not happen like on day 3 or something like that?
Here's the thing, man. Everybody wants to get there in a hurry. It takes time. Even for the greats, it takes time. It takes time. But he got there. That's the thing.
Yes, he did. All right. Earlier this month, Pure Prairie Poultry closed its processing facility up in Charles City, Iowa, declared bankruptcy. That left Pure Prairie's contract growers holding the bag with millions, honestly, of broiler chickens and no resources to take care of those chickens. State officials, Minnesota and Iowa, they apparently had the authority to step in and to do something, either euthanize those chickens or feed them out and have them processed, or give them away. Officials in Wisconsin, however, did not have that authority to help poultry producers, which created a very dicey situation for some of the growers there in the States. Brian Winnikins is the farm director and much more at AgriTalk affiliate WRDN up in Durand, Wisconsin. He's been following the developments in the situation from the beginning and has been doing a great job of keeping us up to speed on what has been happening. It's time to get Brian in here to get us up to speed. Brian, my friend, welcome to AgriTalk. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing very well. How about yourself?
Doing real fine, real fine. So, Brian, let's start. You know what? I want to start at the beginning on this. How did you learn about the situation? How did you first hear that Pure Prairie left producers kind of holding the bag there in Wisconsin?
Well, that would have been on October 9th. Well, I was at the Durand City Council meeting covering that for the station, and I received a message from a listener that told me about it. And then Rhonda, my partner, she sent me a private message saying, "Hey, I just received this message. You guys look what's going on." That's kind of how it started.
Okay. And you first started to dig into this, talking to some of the producers out there. What did you learn?
Well, the biggest thing was the producers were pretty much just, they were told early in October, that first week of October, right around the September 30th, October 1st, contracts are done. Have a nice life. Pretty much that's it. There was really no guidance given to the poultry growers. They were just told, you're done. And the more when I talked with some of the farmers, this had been something that had been actually going on really in 2023, when things had been going well, and then all of a sudden first bonuses are being delayed. But don't worry about it, we'll get caught up. And then in April, there were some producers weren't getting paid, but don't worry about it, we'll get caught up. And we have a great summer ahead, and don't file anything with the Packers and Stockyards Act and that sort of thing. They just got strung along, Chip. I mean, it's as simple as that. And really, the company declared bankruptcy in the last half of September. However, when you have assets of 50 to 100 million, but liabilities of 100 million to 500 million, needless to say, creditors were like, no, we're not going to do that. And actually the bankruptcy was dismissed on, I think it was September 27th, if I'm not mistaken. And then basically that just started the rest of this process.
Okay. All right. Some of the contract growers up there in Wisconsin, as I understand it, just said, listen, if you want these birds, come get them. Is that right?
Yeah, they tried to do that. One of the farmers, actually started to speak out, had spoken out to a television station in Iowa, I think it was. And the company saw that and then said, well, we're not going to do anything for you. They kind of retaliated. But they were wanting direction. What do we do here? Take these birds. And remember, Chip, okay, if the company's it's done, there's going to be no bankruptcy, no reorganization. Well, creditors, there's your assets. Because remember, technically, those birds were still company assets. If they're company assets, right, and the company's belly up, the creditors, then they're their assets. And the banks and all that, they weren't going to do anything.
Right. Okay. So you've been doing a great job keeping this issue in front of people, asking the right people the right questions. What's being done now? What is the status?
Well, the status for the farmers here, that basically either sold the birds for $1 or just gave them away for donations. The barns have been cleaned out. So that's all been done. And now we have to pick up the pieces. I mean, Chip, one farmer I chatted with on Saturday, the 12th, excuse me, he was like, I asked him, well, what do you do now? He goes, I'm not sure. I have $300 to my name, and see that barn, I have a $20,000 payment coming up.
Okay.
So there's the financial part of it for the farmers. There's the animal welfare part of it for, the animals, and Iowa and Minnesota, they had some type of plan in place, but it also was who's paying for it. Well, thank you, Chip, in Iowa, and those folks in Minnesota, thank you for doing that, while the company and the lenders just get to walk away.
Right. Now, is that going to change in Wisconsin? I know that you've talked with some state lawmakers about changing that so that there are some protections for those contract growers.
Yeah, there's already talk about that. I talked with our local state representative he's in the state assembly, and his district is pretty much in the center of this. He's already talked with the chairman of the state agriculture committee. Of course, it's election time, so nothing's going to happen here with this right now. Potentially a lame duck session, quote unquote, or an extraordinary session in Wisconsin, because the legislature isn't in session throughout the year. But even then, this isn't going to be something that is going to happen in a week. This is, and even on a federal level, Senator Klobuchar, she's on Senate Ag. She had said, maybe, we haven't done the farm bill. Maybe we should do something and add to the farm bill. So did Congressman Van Orden, who's on the House side, who's on the House Ag Committee. He had talked with Chairman Thompson actually on Thursday, the 10th, when I was at one of the farms in Trempealeau. He had him on the phone and they were chatting about this. But there's so many issues, Chip, that this isn't going to be easy. There's the farmers paying them, the growers and paying them, But then there's the animal welfare aspect of this. And if you look, Chip, again, Wisconsin's taken a pretty big black eye for this. I totally get that. But if you call Department of Agriculture representatives across the upper Midwest or across the country, I'm betting most of those Department of Ags would say the same thing. Well, for animal welfare, we don't have anything in place for this.
Yeah, that's interesting. And Senator Baldwin is pushing fairly hard to get some efforts at the federal level to provide some protection, right?
She is, and she's working with Senator Klobuchar on that. I think pretty much through the Farm Bill. But again, Chip, what's that protection going to look like?
Right.
And who pays for it? That's the question I have.
Well, yeah, taxpayers. Period. End of story. But that's who's going to pay for this.
And I don't think that's right. I think that's then there's no incentive for these companies or the financial people to care or to do anything about it. I mean, remember, while there's all these creditors, 200 to and more, that are owed $500 million potentially, somebody has a guaranteed loan from USDA that they gave Pure Prairie for $39 million, and they don't care.
Right.
They don't care what to do. So to me, there's got to be something else in here to make them accountable, be it an insurance bond or something, if anything, at least for the animal welfare part of it, so that taxpayers like in Iowa and Minnesota right now are footing the bill for this.
Right. Brian, Pure Prairie got like a $46 million loan from USDA, or a loan or a grant. What happened to that money? Go ahead.
That's the question that Senator Klobuchar has, Senator Baldwin has, Congressman Van Orden have. They've all three have said we have to have a oversight investigation. Not only where did the money go, but how did USDA make these, approve this? It was about a $39 million guaranteed loan and about a $6 to $7 million grant. All of this in regards to what happened with the pandemic and trying to expand meat processing. So that's kind of where all of this came from. But their questions are, A, where did the money go? How did you guys determine this company was going to be viable or were worth getting the money in the first place? From what farmers have told me, they've said that the board or people on the board, some of these leaders of this company had absolutely no idea how the poultry industry worked, or had worked in it before, but had run stuff into the ground. Can't confirm any of that, but that's what the farmers were telling me, and then you have the workers, I mean, I just received this today, from one of the workers that, with the way that the company is, there is no way that the workers are going to get paid. So now what do we do? And is there going to be a lawsuit? State of Iowa could file a lawsuit in this, but if there's no money, the state of Iowa is getting nothing back. I mean, that's just the reality here. That's right. And the other part of this is this only affected the broilers, not the breeding stock. The breeding stock was taken over by a company, I think, out of California. So those folks at least had a place to go somewhere.
Gotcha. Well, I tell you what, we're not done with this story. We just needed to get an update and kind of bring us up to speed on what the current status is. And Brian, you've helped us do that. Thank you so much, buddy.
You're welcome. Have a great day.
All right. Brian Winnekins, WRDN up in Durand, Wisconsin. He's been on top of this story from the very beginning and helping to keep us up to speed. Now he's helping to keep you up to speed as well. Davis and I will be right back.
On your favorite radio station or your preferred digital device, AgriTalk is live every weekday. Welcome back to AgriTalk, everyone. We are live on this weekday, in fact. Glad you're here with us. Davis Michelson with Chip Flory as well. Let's, it was great to touch base with the former congressman out of Pennsylvania, Congressman Dent. Today. What I really liked about it was just his notion that the Republican Party is not a MAGA monolith.
Right.
This is the guy who's leading the party now, and who has the support of the group. But there are still other ideas out there. He's talking about constitution, peaceful transfer of power, free markets, strong international policy, and fiscal discipline. I don't see anything wrong with any of that.
Right.
Maybe in practice,
right.
maybe in practice it shakes out weird, but
yeah, and that's the reason that I asked him to talk a little bit about our Republican legacy, so that he could lay a groundwork, so that we would know from from where he is coming in his comments on tariffs and trade policy.
Yep.
Yeah. That's exactly why I asked him to do that.
And I'm glad you did.
And I think he missed one. I think he missed one.
Oh.
Unity is in on that as well.
Okay. Yep. And he, what I like is he talked about the relationship with foreign trade and made it specific. 70 million Hershey's Kisses a day. 70 million kisses a day. That's too much even for me. I mean, I like kisses, in all forms.
Oh, yeah.
But 70 million, that's too many.
That's
you go
an
long
incredible
chapstick
number.
On a day like that is what you do.
Okay.
You go long chapstick. But we're talking about imported cocoa. We're talking about imported aluminum from various sources.
Okay,
you don't
so
think about that stuff.
I knew that he would comment on the cocoa. That's the whole reason that I thought, you know what? This guy's got perspective that we probably could use.
Yeah.
So, and it was because of the cocoa trade and Hershey's. I'll admit, I didn't even think about the aluminum.
Yeah.
And the amount of aluminum that they use, that fine aluminum, to wrap up those Hershey's Kisses. Unbelievable.
Yeah, what is that? 70 million little 1-inch squares, would you call it, a day of aluminum we need?
Yeah, it's a phenomenal amount. You could fill up a gymnasium pretty quick.
Yeah. Would you? How did his comments strike you when he took us all the way back to the 1930s? Across the board tariffs exacerbated the Depression and prolonged it. I'm not sure that I'd heard anyone drill it down there.
The way that struck
what your
me
thoughts
is I've got to go back and take a look at that a little bit deeper and have conversations with people that have studied it, that I trust. I need to look at that a little bit further. No doubt about it. But to me, I understand the argument that he was making and how it did put some additional stress on consumers, because tariffs tend to bring some inflationary pressures into the marketplace. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then we've got the whole issue that leads us to Nippon Steel. Apparently the deal was made in December of 2023, but it's hung up in, I don't know, somewhere in legislative approval or something like this. Now, I have been fully willing to jump on the bandwagon. U.S. Steel means U.S. Steel.
Yeah.
It's a crucial industry for our nation. Got us to where we are. I don't know if Nippon wants to come in and infuse with, I forget what the dollar amount was. I don't know how to think about this either, dude. This guy kind of turned my thinking on its head a little bit when it comes to some of these Republican sorts of issues.
Right. That's the whole reason that I wanted to have him on, was to add to the conversation. I don't think I can, with any kind of authority, say this is how the Nippon situation is going to influence the economy, and therefore
neither can I.
Right.
Yeah.
But it is one of those issues that we are watching very, very closely. And it gets back to one of the first things that I said to Congressman Dent, and that is, I grew up believing that there is no free or fair trade, but there can be freer and fairer trade. And that gets us back to reciprocity. And if we are allowing market access to the U.S., market, then whoever we are importing product from into that situation needs to provide the same level of access into their markets for U.S. products.
That makes sense. Yeah.
That is the bottom line of why those that promote or encourage the use of tariffs, that's their whole goal, is to gain as much access to those markets as we are giving access to the U.S. market. And I get that. That is that's part of the journey to get us to freer and fairer trade.
Yeah.
So I understand it. The question is how much do you want to get beat up in the process?
Right. Yep.
And we look back at the tariffs that were put in place under the Trump administration and the fallout that we had in the soy complex, the corn market, and some of the other ag markets. That was a significant fallout. Now, farmers will say, yeah, but that was covered by the market facilitation program payments. And that's true. Taxpayers will say, yeah, and we had to cover the cost.
Right.
So there's that give and take on all of these issues, and we need to look at it from all those different angles to try to come to some sort of a consensus on this. You know what? Yeah. We'll talk more about it this afternoon. Carl Setzer from Consus Ag Consulting is going to be on. Do you know Carl? Remember that guy?
Yeah, okay. The commodities cowboy, as I recall.
I think that's exactly right. Tomorrow morning, Senator Chuck Grassley here on AgriTalk.